Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Never know who's going to walk into the iambeast studio, and today I'm just as excited with our guest. This is an interesting guest today because his bio reads school teacher, 9 years, psychology, history, and government. All three my favorite topics, I might add, except for physical fitness isn't on here. But musician as well, professional comedian, and he's here to tell us this journey in his own words, trials and tribulations, but he's living his beast mindset, dreams, the whole 9 yards. I'd like to welcome to the show.
Thanks, man.
From Indianapolis, Indiana, Justin Seymour. What's up, Justin?
What's up, man? Well,
Man,
thanks for having me.
No problem. I'm looking at this bio. This is crazy. I left this out. 23 years old.
Yeah.
The youngest congressional campaign manager. Before we get there.
Okay, yeah.
Before we even get there. Tell a little bit about you.
Well, I mean, it's hard to know where to start, really, honestly, because like now, so I've just been doing comedy for about 3 years. All over the Midwest. You know, I've got some cool opportunities. I got to perform in Amsterdam when I was there earlier this year. So, you know, I'm just at comedy clubs just trying to make something out of telling jokes, honestly. That's really where I'm at now. But I've had a long journey, you know. Before I did comedy, like, as you said, I was a musician for 10 years. But as I was a musician, I was also a school teacher. So I taught high school for, you know, going on almost a decade.
What school?
I taught at a school called Frankfurt High School. It's a pretty small school. It's northwest, about 40 minutes from Indianapolis.
Okay.
But yeah, not a huge school. But I did all my student teaching and stuff here in Indy. So I was, you know,
Were you born and raised here in Indianapolis?
I was born on a farm in Boone County, Indiana.
Wait a minute. I know where. I've heard of Boone County. Where's Boone County?
Yeah, again, northwest of Indy. So you know the Lebanon area? Yeah. So if you drive north towards Lebanon, I was born, I don't know, a few miles outside of Lebanon.
That's a lot of farmland out
there.
Dude,
it's a lot of farmland. My whole family farmed, and that just wasn't for me.
How did you realize it wasn't for you when they said go milk the cows?
I liked reading books.
Okay.
I liked like reading books and learning stuff, and you know, which is cool. No, I like now when I look back, I'm glad I grew up in that area. But when you're young, you're like,
is your family still there? Are the roots still there in farming?
Yeah, definitely. So, I grew up in like my immediate family, my nuclear family. They were not farmers, but my whole family, my extended family, especially on my mother's side, they were all just like, you know, farming like thousands of acres of land. And we all lived on this 1 mile stretch of road. Mm-hmm. So my aunts and uncles, my grandparents who owned all the farm, yeah, dude, they're still farming. They're still.
What are they growing? Soybeans?
Soybeans and corn.
In Indiana, soybean and corn.
Yep, that's it.
Is there money in it?
There's money in it. Yeah, no, that was always the interesting thing because like I had this whole extended family here, and my immediate family, my nuclear family, we really didn't have much money.
What was the difference between the two? You mentioned two families. What's the?
Yeah, so your nuclear family is like your mom and your dad and your brother, sister, whatever. Which I just have a sister, but then your extended family was my aunts and uncles, my grandparents, and it was interesting because my immediate family, we really didn't have much money at all, but my extended family did because they ran this huge farm and they made a ton of money off of it. But so it was always weird. I always felt adjacent to money, you know. So we benefited from that sometimes, but I know my mom was like working as like she would do like. Work at a restaurant, you know.
Were you close to your mom and dad on the farm?
No, well, so not really. My family's not particularly close. I haven't talked to my mom in almost 10 years now, actually, just due to some other stuff, you know, that was like difficult. And then my dad, you know, he's just driving a concrete truck growing up, you know. And then, so like we weren't really farming on my immediate family, but I was around it all the time.
When we had other comedians on here, and I noticed that a lot of comedians, when they tell jokes, it's always a reflection of their livelihood. How much of your livelihood is in your comedy, in your material? Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say I always tell people that like whoever I am on stage is pretty different than my real person actually, or it's like a very extreme version of who I am. Yeah, it's like the horniest, angriest version of me, like the worst version of me as a human being up there.
But you can get away with it because it's comedy, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So so a lot of my stuff is lies based in something that might be true, right? So
it's that you want it to be true in your life?
No, not necessarily. Like a lot of times, it's just jokes, man. Like I like writing jokes. I'm obsessed with like the art form of joke writing, and if it's funny, I'll say it. Like so, I think Rogan has said in one of his things. He goes, "I'll always tell you guys the truth unless a lie is funnier." And if I can, then a lot of the times the lies I come up with are funnier.
When did you realize you had a talent to even write?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, I've always been kind of an artist, right? So I've been doing music and stuff for a long time. I always loved stand-up ever since I was a kid.
Who was your favorite?
Oh man, growing up, it was funny. Like I grew up on this farm around like the whitest people in the world, but I watched.
There's none of us in Boone County?
There was not very many black people in Boone County, Indiana. But dude, I would rent like. You remember when you could like rent tapes and stuff? Yeah. You know, from like I would rent like I think I watched Eddie Murphy's Delirious when I was like. I was young.
Your parents let you watch Eddie Murphy's Delirious?
Yeah, they weren't around a lot, you know. So I watched like Eddie Murphy's Delirious, and I think I rented like one of Martin Lawrence's stand-up specials. So like I only watched like black comics growing up, and I actually didn't know till I was like 15 that white people even did comedy.
You didn't know about Steve Martin, Andrew Dice Clay?
No, I didn't know about any of them. No, dude, I was just watching like black comics growing up, and I thought it was amazing. But I didn't think it was something I could do, not because I was white. I just didn't know it was something I could do. But I always had a sense of humor. So
that's the coolest part about being a comedian. Like, you know, like when you get up on stage, man, like, I'd be scared like I'm a bomb. Like, do you start out with a cuss joke like, yeah, I fucked her?
Yeah, well, yeah, it depends on the show, I guess. I don't know. The coolest part, so it's when you tell people you're a comedian, they're like, oh, that's so cool. But I think it's just because you've never been one.
Right.
It's actually like not nearly as glamorous as you would think at all. It's a ton of work.
What do you mean it's not glamorous? You can be anything you want to be.
Right.
For, what is it? 30 seconds, 60 seconds?
Yep. It's just not. It's like anything, right? Like, you know, it's cool people watch you on this podcast and like, oh, that's so cool, man. He's got this awesome. But you put a ton of work into this. There's no way that it was like just, oh man, look at me on my cool podcast. You put a ton of work behind the scenes, right? It's the same with stand up. It's a ton of travel. It's a ton of like writing all the time, testing out material, and then bombing, and then realizing that doesn't work, so I got to write more. But your initial question was, when did I realize I could write? Mm-hmm. So I was always funny and always just kind of weird with people, and I always enjoyed that. I would write material like way before I did stand-up. Like I was teaching, and I would write bits that I didn't know I was ever going to do anything with. And then one day I saw this show in my town, and I was like, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. And I started talking to this local comic who was running these shows, and we're good friends now. And she gave me a spot on her show. 3 minutes. She's like, you can do 3 minutes to start my show, which is pretty cool, actually, for someone who'd never done stand-up.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I wrote a bit about getting a vasectomy, which I had just gotten. And I still do some of that material once in a while.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if I realized I could write, but I knew I was funny. And I was thinking about this comedy, being a comic, it's just like anything else. It's taking something you already have a passion for, which is being funny, and then just applying discipline to it.
How did the education part of your resume, this is 9 years of teaching some pretty powerful topics, history.
Yeah.
Let's start with this. Tell me why history, tell me why psychology, and then tell me why government. These are three serious topics, and for 9 years to teach this, there's passion with these three topics.
Yeah, I mean, I love them all. They're the best, right? So I don't know. I think I started loving history as a kid. I don't know. I think I had a great history teacher when I was in like 5th grade or something, and then I read a book by a woman named Eva Kor, and I think I was in 4th or 5th grade. She's a Holocaust survivor. She actually has a big impact on me later on. If you want to make a full circle on this, but. Eva Kor is from here in Indiana. She was a Holocaust survivor. I read her book in like 4th or 5th grade, which is pretty heavy for a 4th or 5th grader. Right. But I was fascinated by it, so I got just obsessed with history, and I was always great at it in school. And so as I went through school, I was like, all right, I thought I wanted to do a lot of different stuff, but by the end of high school, I was like, you know, I love this so much. I love learning about it, and I love sharing it.
What part of history do you really gravitate to? What are 3 areas of history that you really gravitate to?
Actually, I gravitate a lot towards prehistory, which is before written history. Like when I got into college, I took an anthropology class, and that was the first time I'd actually ever learned about hominids. I didn't know
that they
existed, man. And I was like, that's a failure of high school education to not teach me about pre-human humans.
Right.
That blew my mind.
Right.
And so I'm like learning the different skulls of these different pre-humans and stuff. I thought that was fascinating. So I think about that a lot. And then also, of course, like World War II. So
why World War II?
I think it's because of reading Eva Kor's book as a Holocaust survivor.
Okay.
Actually, so I can tell this story. In 2021, I applied for a grant through Eli Lilly, you know, the pharmaceutical company. They give grants to teachers who come up with like creative projects. And they award 100 teachers this grant. So I put together this project where I would travel across Europe, going to different World War II sites and museums and stuff, especially liberation sites. So I put together this project, and I won the grant. And then in 2022, after COVID stuff had passed, I went all around Europe for a month. And then went to Auschwitz, where Eva Kor was. So that was an amazing project. So I just fascinated with that. Why? I don't know.
What did you take away from just that part of your journey, knowing that you read Eva's story? She's local, but to go back in a moment of time with her ancestors, what did you take away from that particular moment?
It's weird because when you have an experience in the moment, it's always different than you think it's going to be. Like, this is going to sound terrible, but when I went to Auschwitz, I was like, it's not as bad as I thought. It wasn't, because it honestly looks nowadays, if you go into the first part of the camp, it looks kind of like an abandoned community college.
Yeah.
But after reading her book and knowing what I went through, and then as I went through it more, obviously, it's like horrible things happened there.
Right.
Actually, in that whole trip, doing that whole month, just every day I was visiting some kind of World War II memorial or museum. I really saw like how much effort human beings have put into killing each other.
I was going to say that versus trying to get along.
Yeah, I mean, it's astounding the amount of like effort, and I mean, just think about the uniforms, man. Like just uniforms. I'd see these uniforms in museums from the 1700s to the now. Think about the effort it took just to make those for everybody. I mean, that's incredible. Yeah. And that doesn't count all the weaponry and the machines and everything it took. And I thought about like just how much effort we've put into trying to put into killing each other, and I became pretty disillusioned with that, because I was like, we still haven't accomplished it. So what, which is good, I guess. I guess we haven't.
Were you able to share your trip with her at all?
No, she passed away. She passed away about a year before I went. Okay. I would have loved to do that. I did go to her. She actually has a museum in Terre Haute, Indiana, where she was living after she came from Europe. She came to Indiana for some reason. But I did go to her museum and talk to the curator of her museum.
Psychology.
Yeah, psychology. Always fascinated.
You like to probe.
Yeah, I'm a big question guy, Like I love asking questions about people. Probably one of my, I know we have one of our sex experts here. I love Esther Perel. I don't know if you know Esther Perel's work. She's fantastic. I love why we do what we do. Why humans do what we do and all of our behavior.
What did you come up with? You asked yourself a question.
It depends.
What was your answer?
Why we do what we do?
Yeah.
I'm not a psychologist. I still don't have the answer, but I can tell you about what other people have come up with.
Tell me one.
About why people do what we do. I guess it depends on who you ask, right? If you ask,
that'd be a good question.
If you ask someone like Abraham Maslow, he would say we're just trying to meet certain needs as human beings, right? And as we meet our needs and go up this, we calls Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? From food, water, shelter, all the way up to self-actualization. If you ask him, that's what we're all doing. That's why we do what we do. I mean, for me, I think about that a lot because as a comic or an artist, you're trying to self-actualize. That's what you're trying to do. You're trying to become the best version of who you are. And I think you did bodybuilding, right?
You've been doing your research?
I had to read a little bit about you. I didn't know anything about the show coming in. I was like, plus, you just...
Yeah, I did.
It's the same thing, right? You're trying to self-actualize. You're like, how good of a person, what's the best version of myself I can be? And I think that's a good answer, but there's lots of answers as why we do what we do.
The youngest congressional campaign manager. What fascinates you about government?
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Besides the money.
Good. Yeah, well, I
Besides
didn't
the
make any
money.
money in it, so that's okay. So, growing up, when you become interested in history, by definition, you have to have an understanding of government.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that. They go hand in hand.
They go hand in hand, right? The story of history is basically the story of what governments are doing, right? In the grand scheme. So I got interested in that when I was in high school. I had a great government teacher in high school who I developed a pretty good relationship with. And then I went to college to start studying education, history education. And when I graduated, that year I was graduating, my government teacher, my former government teacher in high school, he announced that he was going to run for Congress against Todd Rokita. Mm-hmm. And I called him up and I said, hey, it's been a couple of years, but, we always got along real well. If you need any help with your campaign, I'm thinking putting out signs or whatever, just helping him out, right? And he goes, hey, you wanna meet with me? And I said, sure. We had a meeting together, and I asked him, I was like, hey, tell me about your team. What have you got going on? And he really didn't have anything together yet. Really? He just had made an announcement he wanted to do this. And I was like, okay, you don't have a team, you don't have a plan. Like, what about this? I'm asking all kinds of questions, right? And then
you became a strategist,
kind of,
without even knowing.
Right, yeah. At that meeting, and he goes, "Well, what do you think about running my campaign?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll give it a shot." But I was young, man. I was 23 years old.
What did you do? How did you even navigate? What was your
my
operation?
Role?
Yeah. How did you plan the thing?
So my role was campaign strategy. So I would come up with like events we would go to. I would help. Really at that level, at the level I was at, because we were pretty inexperienced politically, I was doing kind of everything. Whether it was scheduling events or helping him write speeches or whatever.
What did you see in him to make you even want to?
Great guy. Amazing guy.
But being great doesn't mean you're going to be good in a role like that.
So when you're running for Congress, you're actually running for a particular area of a state, right? This was District 4 of Indiana.
Okay.
So that's like the whole, a lot of the western part of our state. That includes Lafayette. It includes Avon and Kokomo and stuff like that. I thought he was a great representation of the people in that area, right? Because he was running as a Democrat, even though that area is pretty conservative. But he himself, he's a pretty moderate Democrat. Right? He likes guns. He lives on a farm, very much like those people in Western Indiana. So I just thought he was, and he's educated, smart guy, but very down to earth. Mm-hmm. And he could have a team that could help him with policy stuff. He had a few policy ideas in mind, but he could have a team that could help him with policy.
Do you remember some of his policies that attracted you?
Well, his biggest thing was his focus on education, because he was an educator. That was what attracted me the most.
Okay.
I don't know if you know about anything about Indiana.
I love Indiana.
I like Indiana, actually.
Loser.
But in terms of what they do with education as policy, it's not good.
Yeah.
On my drive down here, actually, on 65, there's a huge billboard. It says, "Be a teacher." And I think it's because there's a huge shortage in Indiana of teachers. Yeah. It's that billboard will probably do it. That'll probably cut the
get us out of the woodwork.
Yeah, that's definitely. Don't worry about raising their pay or helping with benefits or the amount of kids they have in class or anything that would actually move the needle. Let's just put up a billboard.
So what happened in the loan scheme? You become the campaign manager.
Yeah.
What were the pitfalls that you learned from? Did he wind up winning? Did he? What was the outcome?
Right, good question. So he was running as a Democrat in District 4 of Indiana, which means we pretty much knew he wasn't going to win from the outset, right? We knew it wasn't likely. So the question is, I asked him this. I said, so why are you doing this? If you know you have a very low chance, if any, of actually winning, why are you doing it? And he said, if nobody runs opposing the incumbent, which was Todd Rokita at the time, then we have a dictatorship. And he's right. And he goes, and that's unacceptable. We can't you at least have to have a choice as a voter. And I agreed. I think you have to at least have to have a choice. Even if it's one that most people aren't going to make, you have to have a secondary choice. Otherwise, you are living in a dictatorship. And that was his answer. And I thought that was a pretty high-minded answer, to go through a whole campaign, spend a ton of money. It's a lot of personal sacrifice that he made to do this. You think, he's doing it because he wants the glory of winning and stuff, but he knew he was probably going to lose, more than likely than not, and he still did it all anyway. So I mean, that just shows you like the character of the guy. I think a lot of people get into it thinking they're gonna have a chance of winning, and gaining something from it. But
you did 11 albums.
Yeah.
Look, your resume is crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. It's funny. I was talking to somebody like not that long ago, and we were just having a conversation, asked me about stuff about life, and they're like, God, is there anything you haven't done?
So you said music.
Yeah, no, they're like, is there anything you haven't done in life? I don't think I've done a lot at this point. I'm 33. So yeah, I did 11 albums. I played in metal bands, all through my 20s, all while I was teaching, all while I was campaign managing. And so
what was the name of your band?
We were called the Room Colored Charlatan, which is the worst name for a band ever.
Who came up with that?
Me. I came up with that. It's actually like a lyric from some band I really liked, and I just thought it was like cool when I was like 19.
Is it heavy metal, alternative
rock?
rock?
It's like they call it progressive metal.
Never heard of it.
Yeah. So progressive, it's just like it's metal music that's like
is it a cross between Pearl Jam, Metallica?
It's like heavy, way heavier than that.
Way heavier than that?
Way heavier.
Guns N' Roses?
Way heavier than that. You got the screaming, the
Twisted Sister?
It's probably heavier than that. Wow. But it also has it's very complicated music, right? So it's very technical music to play.
What makes it technical?
It's just very challenging to play.
Really?
Imagine like in classical music, you have people that are playing pieces on violin that's just very technically challenging. And that's what this style of music is in terms of metal. It's just very technically challenging music to play.
Well, you had to be pretty good to do 11 albums.
I don't know. I never got remotely famous, so I don't think it's almost statistically impossible to put out 11 albums and still not get known for it. But so I don't know. I was okay. I think I was a decent guitar player, a decent, a pretty good songwriter overall. But it's just difficult to make it in any art form. But I enjoyed doing it.
You're 33 years old. You're still young.
Yeah.
Still a lot more doors can open for you. But you seem to be really gravitating to being a comedian. Is that really becoming your passion? Why?
Yeah, 100%.
Why is that?
Well, after doing music for so long, when you do an art form for a long time, you realize okay, I think I've gone as far with this as I can go. I've squeezed all the juice out of this art form for me, right? And that's how I still do some music stuff, but basically that's where I got. And I loved stand-up so much. I just thought it was an amazing art form, and I loved being funny. I thought, why don't I try to do this? And so I took a year off from teaching. In 2022, I left teaching. I just left working entirely. I took a year as what I called early retirement. And I was like, I'm going to do stand-up for a year and see if this is something I can do. And it went well. It started going well for me.
When you say it went well,
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off. When you say it went well, what is your definition of well? Because by you telling me that, I'm thinking money-wise.
No.
But it's not always money. You probably just enjoyed doing what you did.
Well, I would say well as in I could do it.
Without any fears, repercussions?
Yeah, I could do it. No, there's definitely fear. There's lots. I could do it, and I could make people laugh reasonably consistently. Which, you see these stand-ups on Netflix, you're like, oh, they make it look easy. But it is not an easy art form, just like anything, right?
What makes it not easy?
Everything from how to construct a joke properly, performing on stage is, if you have stage fright, which I don't really have stage fright, but everything, the way you deliver, every piece of the art form leading up to getting a laugh is intentional. And most people don't know that because it doesn't look like it is. It looks like it's just off the fly, right? But most of these jokes that legit comedians write, they know every beat of that joke, how to say it, when to pause, what words to elongate, when to yell the thing, when to not, when to be quiet about it, how to control an audience when you're, maybe things are kind of going off the. There is a ton to the art form, and I'm just like music, just like anything else. I get off on, on getting good at stuff, right? Just the better when you get better at something, it's just very satisfying.
Do you take notes, mental notes, like when I was competing in bodybuilding? If I didn't win the show. It's funny. I'm always looking at my competition. And it's funny because if you have 15 guys or 30 guys, you will ask yourself, how do you focus on 30 other guys? I said, I don't focus on the 30. I usually focus on the top 10.
Right.
And then I round it down to the top 5. And then I see where I made my mistake based on the people that beat me.
Yep.
you're on stage as an individual. How do you hone your craft? Say, for instance, you got a bad night.
Yep.
And then you have the same material that you used the night before tend to work. What's kind of like your strategy here?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So I film pretty much all my sets. So I film them.
Pretty smart.
Yeah, and most comics that are taking it seriously do. I film them. I go back and watch them, and it's hard. It's hard to watch yourself do stand-up. I mean, it's brutal sometimes, especially when you're bombing, you know?
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So you're like, okay, like, what was going on with my delivery here? Does this joke need to be reworked? Why didn't they laugh at this? But then, like you said, you look at guys who are at the top, and you say, what are they doing? Or how are they doing it right? And there's people like that, you know, in this comedy scene in Indianapolis. There's some people who are really, really talented and really good.
Give me three that are talented here locally.
Yeah, good question.
We go to three that are really that you look at.
Who's really good right now? Let's see. Patrick Murray is a guy here in town who's just hilarious, man. He's just so funny. Let's see who else is great. There's a lot to name, so I'm trying to think. I don't want to single anybody.
You don't want to leave everybody
out.
out.
Patrick Murray's really funny. Tyson Cox is really good. Tyson is like a great writer. He's getting cleaner with his material, which is really hard to do. David Brooks is really good. You know, he went from, I think he was dealing drugs at one point, and now he's killing it in stand-up. He's just, so, yeah, those three guys are great. Who else is awesome? Aisha, the comedian, she's awesome, amazing. Very different than me, you know, very different style than me, but she's really funny.
You mentioned something that just hit me. Cleaning up. You mentioned the guy, he's now cleaning up. How is it difficult to clean up?
For me, it is.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. For me, it's
with the profanity and so forth. Can you tell a joke and really deliver it in a way that is not, like you said, cleaning up?
Right. Yeah. So for me, I don't use a lot of profanity, which is interesting. I'm like they call it working blue. So I do like dark jokes that are like about topics that most people don't want to think about, right? Mm-hmm. Or, you know, so I'll do dark jokes like that. They usually have some kind of twist that you're like, oh, I was not expecting that to be the thing, right? But some people are profanity or graphic imagery or whatever. That's dirty comedy. And then some comics are able to work totally clean where they don't do any of that stuff. They talk about whatever, like, you know, like Jim Gaffigan, right, is very famous for, you know, talking about food. And he's made millions of dollars and probably 10 albums talking about food, you know? And that's amazing. That's a gift to be able to do that. And as I progress in my art form, I'm only, you know, almost 3 years in. That's pretty new to stand up, actually. It takes a long time to develop as an artist, just like in anything you do. If you're a musician, it takes like 5, 6, 7 years before you figure out, oh, this is my sound. Right. Same with stand-up.
Who are three of your favorites?
Comics?
Professional.
My favorite, probably Louis C.K. is probably still one of my top favorites of all time. I love Daniel Tosh's stand-up. I just went and saw him at the Murat like a couple weeks ago. I saw him in Vegas as well. Daniel Tosh is amazing. And then from there it gets tough. Guys like Greg Giraldo is probably one of my top. He's dead now, but he was amazing. I still love like Chappelle. Right now I'm really into Dion Cole. I don't know who Dion Cole is. Dion Cole, Chicago comic who's amazing. I think he's like the face of what's that?
Irish Spring.
It's not Irish Spring. It's Old Spice.
Old Spice.
Yeah, but people don't realize how amazing of a comedian he is, dude. He is an incredible comic.
What makes him incredible to you?
So he
outside of the commercial, where
yeah. Well, so not only does he have just great jokes, he's amazing at doing something a lot of comics suck at, which is act outs. So he'll hit his punchline and then he'll do an act out, like which is like literally him like acting the joke out in some way. And a lot of comics can't. I can't do that. I'm not good at it. Yeah. So, but which if you think about what that does is it enhances the punchline and drags the laughter out longer. So he doesn't even have to come up with new punchlines. He'll just hit a punchline that he's written, and then he'll do an act out, and it'll double the length of the laughter for people. Yeah, it's amazing gift.
What's the end game for you? Before we wrap up, what's your
good question? I don't know. I just make people laugh. I just want to make people laugh. That's it. I love doing it. I love the more I can get into a room and make a group of people laugh. That just is very satisfying to me. So if I can do that without having to worry about doing other stuff, the more time I can spend doing that, that's my end game.
How can the viewers reach out to you?
Yeah, you can find me on, I guess, Instagram, Justin J. Seymour, or check out my website, justinjseymour.com. That's where all my shows are.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.